Hi, so I'm Ben Bost, and I work for Transport for London, TfL, in a transport strategy team. And yeah, I've been working in the past year or so in developing a tool to translate the healthy street approach into something practical for designers and engineers and our decision makers. So, um, so why are we looking at public health? You may think that Transport for London main role is to improve our transport system, but we got a duty to reduce health inequalities, legal duty through the GLA Act 2007 and the Social Care and Health and Social Care Act. And importantly, we are well placed to take the lead in tackling the adverse impact of motorized transport, which we can categorize in 5 main categories. So we've got severance, which is when a railway or a major road or major traffic is impeding people's movement. You cannot cross the streets or the transport corridor. That means you cannot access by foot basic services, or communities cannot connect to each other. We've got physical activity, which is one of the biggest impacts of motorized transport on public health. So we know that people who tend to drive more are less active and in poorer health than people who tend to walk, cycle, and use public transport more. As I use public transport more here, that's very important because we know that about 50% of walking trips in London are made to or from public transport. So that is really helping us in getting people more active. The noise is the obvious negative externality of motorized transport. Air pollution, as Rob described earlier in his presentation, and injuries, which is basically people injured or killed by motorized traffic. So the Mayor of London has adopted a new vision and approach to tackle these 5 main impacts of motorized transport on public health, and that's called the Healthy Street approach. So the Mayor's vision was detailed in the document at the bottom right of the screen here, called A City for Londoners, and he says, I quote, "My vision to create healthy streets aims to reduce traffic, pollution, and noise, create more attractive, accessible, people-friendly streets where everybody can enjoy spending time and being physically active, and ultimately to improve people's health." So that's quite a radical change in the way we plan our cities and our transport network when we're putting human experience and human health at the core of our policies and strategies. So what does that mean, this healthy street approach? Well, that's a system of policies and strategies to help Londoners use the car less and be more active through walking, cycling, and using public transport. And it's framed around these 10 healthy street indicators, which you may have seen before. These are evidence-based indicators of a street that is attractive, conducive to more people walking, cycling, and use public transport, and inclusive so that everybody can use it. So I'll quickly go through the 10 indicators. So from the top and clockwise, we've got pedestrians from all walks of life, so a street that is inclusive for all age groups and all disabilities, a street that is easy to cross, where you can find shade and shelter from the weather, where you can find places to stop and rest. This is particularly important for people who are less mobile. A street that is not too noisy, a street that people choose to walk, cycle, and use public transport. And I say choose here, that's important, because we don't want people to use this mode because they don't have a choice. It has to be the best choice available. We want them to choose to do that. A street where people feel safe, a street that is attractive with things to see and do, a street where people feel relaxed, and a street where where the air is clean and safe to breathe. And this approach, is obviously applicable to the street level when you design a street or maintain a street, but also at the network level. So, for instance, you have to plan a proper public transport network to make it a more attractive option than car travel. Or, for example, we are replacing all our bus fleet at the moment to make them cleaner, safer, and quieter. And also the spatial planning level, you have to make sure that London growth is located in places where we can properly service by public transport and with proper cycling infrastructure and a safe walking environment. So how we embedded this idea into our policies? Well, it started in 2014 with the first health action plan from TfL, and that's where the first concept of healthy streets appeared. And since then, we embedded it in most of what we do. So one of the key documents here, if you're interested in a healthy street approach, is a Healthy Street for London, which was published last year and explained why we need to follow this approach and what are the potential benefits in terms of public health. And since then, all the statutory strategies from the Greater London Authority have embedded healthy streets. So we've got the London Plan, which is a key planning document, obviously, and the Mayor Transport Strategy, which is still a draft, but it's available on the public domain if you want to have a look, and will be published formally later this month. And in this document, the healthy street approach is the overarching framework. So everything we do has to comply with this approach. Another key document. So we've developed a set of tools which we call the Healthy Street Toolkit, which are available online on our webpage, on our website. This one is one of the key documents, the Guide to Healthy Street Indicators. If you want to learn more about these 10 healthy street indicators that I described before, I'd advise you to read that. So for each healthy street indicators, you'll have 2 pages. On the left-hand side, you've got a short description of what the indicator is and why it's important, and then a list of prompt questions to help you consider all the elements that influence that indicator. And on the right-hand side, you'll have some best practice example that you can see across London. We developed other tools. So quickly, we've developed a survey that captures people's perception of the street, where we ask them to rate the street they are in against the 10 healthy street indicators, and that gives us an idea of what the expectation is, and it's always above their experience. And it also gives us an idea of what we could and should improve on the street. We've got this document, Valuing the Health Benefits of Transport Schemes, which helps us building the case for change, where basically when we develop a scheme that will encourage more people to walk and cycle, we can put a pound value on this. So that helps us through the decision-making process. Small Change, Big Impact is a report directed to advocacy groups and community leaders to help them deliver change in their local areas, or lobby for change, lobby TfL or local authorities in changing their street environment to make it healthier. And finally, the Healthy Street Check for Designer, which I will expand on now. So these are only 5 tools. We're developing more, but you can already have a look at it online. So the check, what is it for? It's to assess elements of the street against the 10 healthy street indicators. But importantly, it only assesses elements that are within the gift of designer to influence. So we are not assessing street maintenance, enforcement, land use. It's only about the design itself, the layout of the existing street, and the detailed design of your proposal. It can be used as a guidance. So it's not a detailed design guidance document, which you can find these guidances online on the TfL website. But it helps the designer approaching its design in a more holistic way to ensure that we look at these 10 healthy street indicators rather than just one specific issue. And it can be used for communication. So at the consultation stage, to communicate to the public what needs to be changed on the streets and what benefits or scheme will deliver. Who should use it? Well, it's a technical assessment, so you need to be trained to use it and to interpret the results. But all designers and engineers have the base knowledge to use it, so we just need to get in touch with them. We're developing a training program for all our key stakeholders to be using it on their schemes. What type of projects? Every scheme that is expected to have an impact on the experience of people walking and cycling. That's a key rule. And when? Well, as I said, it's a technical assessment, so you can only apply it to a detailed design, not to a concept design or a master planning exercise. You simply wouldn't have the data to complete the check on these earlier stages of project development. So you can use it on your base layout to assess what you need to improve, on the optioneering stage to help you decide which scheme delivers the most benefits, at the consultation stage to communicate the benefit of the scheme, or make the case for change, and obviously post-implementation to make sure that what you built on the ground is actually what you designed. So it looks like this. Obviously, you cannot read anything here. It's a big spreadsheet. So this is just a snapshot. I'll just go through the structure of the document rather than the details of it. So on the left-hand side here, you've got a list of 31 metrics, which are just clearly and shortly described in this column. So obviously, there are more than 31 elements to consider when you design a street, but we focused on what the designer can influence and what you can easily measure. So among these 31 metrics, we've got 26 metrics applicable to all streets and 5 applicable to streets where you've got public transport services on it. All these metrics can be scored from 1 to 3, 3 being the best score. But for 10 of them, the one highlighted in orange here, you can score 0. And these metrics are related to known road danger issues. If you score 0 on one of these, it means you got a serious issue on your existing streets or your layout. It means you got a substandard design that is potentially dangerous. So when you assess a street in London, you may well find a few of these metrics scoring 0, but hopefully in your design you got none or a very limited number. Then all these metrics are mapped out against the 10 healthy street indicators, which I talked about earlier. So for instance, the first metric here, which is speed of motorized traffic. The score of this metric will influence the score of 5 of the 10 healthy street indicators. So what the user has to do is just input the score for each metric on the existing layout and proposed layout, following the guidance on these columns, and you got further guidance if you click on the information button here. So once you've scored every single metric, it automatically generates a score for each of the healthy street indicators and for the street as a whole. So you get this table as the output of the tool with existing layout, proposed layout, and what you're expecting to see is an improvement for every single healthy street indicator. You also got the overall healthy street check score. In this case, it goes from 36 to 68. It's between 0 and 100 each score. So this is a significant increase. That's a dummy example. And you also got the number of metrics that's called 0, so the known road danger issues, in this case from 5 to 1. And these results are also summarized in this graph. So you've got the 10 healthy street indicators, and this graph goes from 0 to 100. And in blue, you've got your existing layout, and in red, you've got your proposed scheme, your proposed layout. So hopefully, the red line will always be above the blue line to show a score uplift. And at the bottom left here, near the people feel safe indicator, you've got the known road danger issues. This is the two key things we need to look out for. So I'll show you an example of a scheme where we applied this tool. So that's in Islington in London. You may have heard of it. It was completed last year. It was a fairly big scheme, £12.8 million. And the main objective, the strategic objective of this scheme was to reduce the car dominance in a town center. So it was about removing gyratory and improve urban realm and improve the facilities for people walking and cycling. So the elements of the streets that were pulling down the score of the check were a large volume of traffic, relatively high speed of traffic. The people cycling were stuck in narrow lanes shared with large vehicles. The pedestrian crossing were not matching the desired lines. There were limited cycle parking, lack of places to rest or shelter, and the surface was not great quality, so which is an accessibility issue. So that's the scheme as it was delivered. By the way, it was delivered before we released the tool, so we did it retrospectively. So what pulled up the score for the final scheme was a traffic closure. So we got reduced traffic volume and speed, new cycle infrastructure on road and off road to segregate people cycling from motorized traffic, new facilities such as benches, trees, cycle parking, fully accessible footpath. So when you look at the output of the check on this scheme, so that's what you get. So you get the table and graph that we talked about earlier. So for every single FS3 check indicator, you got an uplift apart from shade and shelter. That's because some trees were removed, and the picture you see on the top right here, which is the after picture, it's artist impression. The trees are very small at the moment, so there is not much shade. But in 15, 20 years, there will be. So yeah, overall uplift, pretty good, from 47 to 71 out of 100. That's a 24 points. That's a 24-point increase, which is quite significant. You will never see a street that gets the maximum score for every single indicator. It's just not possible, because we're always compromising when redesigning a street. Importantly, there were 7 known road danger issues on the existing streets, and following the change, there is 0. So it's a very good outcome in terms of healthy streets for that scheme. And if you were to look at the detail of the spreadsheet, out of the 31 metrics, 17 have got an increased score, and only 1 scored worse. That's the one about shared use of footway. So we recognize that when people cycling are using the footway, it's not ideal for pedestrians, so that pulls down the score a little. So that's a very brief summary of what the check does and how it came about. So what we're doing at TfL at the moment, we're using that check on every single scheme above £200,000, and with expected impact on people walking and cycling. So that's pretty much every scheme that changes the layout of a street. And we're supporting London boroughs, developers, and consultancies in using that tool. So at the moment, we're developing training programs and training material to help them using it on their schemes. And of course, we're constantly reviewing this tool as it gets more and more used to make sure that it's still relevant and does what it's supposed to do. So once again, it's available on our website. Feel free to have a look, play around with it, and if you got any feedback, please let us know. So that's my email if you want to give me any feedback. Thank you very much.